Hello and welcome back to the 91 F-150. In this video, I'm going to replace the radiator and the fan. I'm going to swap it to an electric fan system. And I'm also going to take a look at the windshield wiper motor. I think I have a bit of an issue with that. So let's dig in. All right, if it'll reproduce it, hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about. Basically what happens is that the wipers come up and they work for a little bit, and then they stop and then start jerking around and then basically become really slow and unusable. So let's see. So you can hear it, there you go. That's pretty much what it's doing. I have a feeling it's the motor, but it could be the switch. But the way these switches are designed, it just doesn't make sense if it was a switch. Boy, look at that. All right, as you can see, I removed the cowl or the cover for the wiper arms and all that are hidden underneath here. It's relatively easy. It's just a bunch of Phillips heads that are up here and down there, which is connected in the engine bay right here. And then there's the 4 screws for the antenna. Just try not to drop, like I almost did here, this part in there, because it might be a little hard to get out. You might have to take the fender off. But just keep an eye on that so it doesn't fall. And then the wiper fluid spray nozzle had to be disconnected too. Now, I'm not 100% sure if you need to remove this whole thing. I think it just makes it a little bit easier to be able to get into the nut that's in there on the motor. Let me actually take this off and let me show you.
All right, well, it's a little bit difficult to show you, but if you take a look on the left side in the center of the screen, you'll see the arm from the motor that comes through that goes onto the rotating assembly that pushes the arms around for the wiper blades. Now, where you see that long arm on the right side, again, almost in the middle, right between that and the rotating part, there's a little like bolt that's there that disconnects that from the motor itself. And that's why it's easier to while the motor is actually screwed in, to take that out and disconnect it.
All right, through a combination of little things, I managed to get the motor out. It's easier when it's all attached, for sure, to unscrew that bolt on the end, but you can't take it completely out because the wiper arm that's right there kind of gets in the way from taking it out. So what you have to end up doing is pull the motor forward, and then once you get that out, you have to kind of like wiggle this out of the socket that it's in and play around with it and then pop it out. But it does come out. It's not too difficult, just takes a bit of work and time. Now, if you're curious, you can only put this in one way. It's keyed, and like you can't just flip the arm and do something different and whatever. It goes in only one way. So what I'm going to do now is try it again. There's no load, no friction, no nothing on this, and let's see if the motor is going to do the same thing as it was doing when the wipers were on. All right, so there it is. Should be a good shot there. Let's try it out again. So there you go. No load on it, and it's still doing the same thing. So it's pretty clear that it's the motor. Well, since I don't have a spare one to replace it with right now, I'm actually just going to put one on order and just take this one and put it aside. I think there's a core on it, but I'll have to take a look at that. All right, moving on. All right, so let's start by kind of taking things out of the way to try and get the radiator out. Let me kind of show you a little bit what it looks like on the inside here. It's not that pretty. And my flashlight stopped working. And well, really, it's not doing that much of a job. So as you can tell, it's really not that green, and you can kind of see a lot of like rusty type liquid. I'm not sure if that's just from the cap. It is pretty full, but I think it's going to be good that I do a clean out. The reason why I'm saying that is because I replaced the TPS sensor on here because the wire was completely shot. One of these wires basically had no coat on it, and it was just exposed to the elements. But when I took the throttle body off, right here, there's like a passageway for coolant to come in through it. I guess to cool down the air as it comes in, or at least to help cool that. That's the only explanation that I can think of. And it was not necessarily blocked, but it was definitely reduced flow.
So there was some junk in there. I'm not sure if it was just located here and only here, or if it's just part of the whole system that has something going on. Now, because I replaced that, I kind of reused the gasket. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go ahead and replace the gasket too while I'm at it. Just in case there is any issue with that. I did have someone take a look at it because I'm still having some idling issues, and he thinks that there might be some kind of leak in that general area. So I'm going to just take a look at that and see what's happening. But I'm going to take all that off, take all the intake off, and also go ahead and just take all the radiator stuff out. All right, tiny update. So I removed all of the intake stuff here and got that out of the way. And like I mentioned, I also removed the throttle body. This isn't necessary. I just removed it again just because of that gasket. But you will, however, have to remove this top hose here because it does go to the radiator. It's basically this connection that goes all across here, and then that goes pretty much there. Right back here is the temperature sensor. This is actually the one for the computer. And then this one right there is for the gauge inside the dash. I'm actually also going to go and remove that one, but I'll also probably just try and clean the area a little bit. There might be some gunk in there. I'm not sure. If I didn't mention it already, I've been having some idling issues, and I did bring it to a mechanic to kind of just have a look over, and that's why the gasket might be an issue and that temperature sensor might be an issue. Also, this, I think it's a MAF sensor or MAP sensor, I can't remember, might also be the issue. But I'm starting with some of the, like the cheap stuff just to make sure that that's not an issue, and then going to move on from there. I'm actually changing the radiator because I actually want to get rid of the actual like physical fan on the engine to maybe pick up a couple horsepower and just to clean up the engine bay a little bit. Well, took off the fan, the shroud, and I also took the little pulley that's there. This guy. Probably just clean it up and give it a little coat of paint since it's not too complicated. Now, just in case you were wondering how I drained it, I basically used the actual drain that's here. It's just a plastic thing. Turn it and it drains out. I used a 3/16 hose on this end here and just kind of shot it into a small container. Not much of a problem. Kept it pretty clean. I didn't have to worry about spilling and splashing all over the place. The only issue I had was when I removed the shroud. The clip that's on here that holds this hose here broke, and then it made it just difficult to unscrew the screw that was there. Now, I do have a bit of a concern when it comes to the transmission lines. They are kind of rusty and not looking that great. This one's not as bad as the bottom one down here. It's in bad shape. I'm hoping that these spin and that I can unlock them easily, but I'll find out. Well, a bit of PB Blaster and some time, and they both came out. It wasn't a big deal. The bottom one I did have to use vice grips just because they were a little, like, it was going to round out the nut, and I was a bit afraid that I would not be able to get it out, but using the vice grip helped to just loosen it up, and then I used a wrench on there. And then, as you can tell, I took the radiator out. Now, it still has the condenser for the air conditioning, and I'm contemplating whether I want to keep it or remove it, since I'm not really going to have AC in here. But it might also act as a bit of a protector or a shield from stuff that comes in on there. But does that really make a difference? I'm not too sure. I'll have to think about that. Here's the original radiator. It's actually still in good shape. It doesn't leak. It can still be used for something. But it's pretty nasty in there. That's some of the liquid that was in there, but that's also trans fluid and also a little bit of dirt that was at the bottom from something else that I was doing. So it doesn't really give you a good idea as to what was there. Here's another idea of what was in there. That's what was actually drained from the bottom. This is the first container that filled up. And as you can see, it's not really that nice. So this thing was overdue for a coolant flush, clean, whatever you want to call it. Now, I don't have the radiator yet. It's on order and it's on its way. I should be able to pick it up tomorrow, fingers crossed, providing there's no issue. And what I'm going to do is just kind of clean the places where the hoses connect, make sure that that's good. I'm actually going to try and flush the engine completely, which might mean taking off the thermostat. And I think that there is a drain plug somewhere on this side where the starter is down there. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get in there, but we'll find out.
And yeah, I'd like to do a full flush on this thing just to make sure I get everything out and make sure the coolant is as good quality as I can make it. Anyway, let's try and get that radiator in. All right, just a quick update. Nothing crazy, but just kind of looked at it and did a few things. And also made my decision on removing the air conditioning condenser. And as you can tell, I completely removed it. Honestly, I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to use it. There's no point in having it there. It's extra space, weight, whatever you want to call it, that's there for no reason at all. And like I said, there was only one connection here. The rest was already disconnected before I even got to it. And there it is. Really nothing to it. I just unbolted it and put the bolts back on here just so I wouldn't lose them. Maybe if I change my mind in the future. If you're wondering what that is, that's just around the heater core or the air conditioner box, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's just to protect you from heat against the exhaust. Honestly, it was, well, as you can tell, pretty ragged, and it was just hanging. It wasn't really stuck on anywhere, so I decided to remove it. Here's the fan shroud, and here's the fan. I had originally thought, like on some of the fans, that you remove the bolts right off the fan, but that's not the case for this one. It's actually just tied in a little bit differently, and it's actually the bolts that are right up on here. This is the part that actually connects to the pulley, and that's how you remove it. I removed these two guys together at the same time. It was just really simple. They were just one inside the other, and I yanked it out. I did go ahead and clean this out too. There is some gunk in there, but what I'm going to do is once I get like a garden hose up around here, then I'll clean that out that way. But I did kind of just shoot some water in there and drained it and made sure that most of the junk was gone. Apart from that, the belt is out. I disconnected the temperature gauge for the computer and the temperature gauge for the actual gauge in the gauge cluster. Can you say gauge enough times? I don't know. Obviously stuck some paper towels in there. I tried to take the thermostat out, but honestly that bolt that's right there is very difficult to get to. I was too afraid that I was going to strip it and break it, so I kind of just left it. This one came out okay, but I just ended up tightening it back up and I left everything there. I don't want to have to remove the distributor. I'm trying to keep this as basic as possible. It's not just a major like overhaul thing, but you know, these 2 points here will allow me to shoot some water into the engine block, and it should come out down there because there is an open passage in here if I'm not mistaken. But I guess I'll find out once I start shooting some water in there. I did, however, find a little bit of an issue on the water pump, and this is kind of rotted. The first half inch here where the hose was attached to was rotted, so I might have to do something to clean that up. I mean, it literally goes down to where the hose clamp was. So if I just cut that chunk off, I'm thinking I should have enough hose, or at least a stretch from up there to come down here should be okay. Anyways, for now, like, I'm not looking to replace that. It'll be replaced later, but for now, I just want to keep it going. And well, I think for today, that's it. Tomorrow I should be able to pick up the new radiator and hopefully throw that in there. I might need some kind of like T or something like that to be able to either go off of there or here. I'm not quite sure yet. Basically the fan control, the thermostat fan control plugged in here somewhere. Unless there's another spot that I'm not aware of, which is entirely possible, but those two look like one of the best spots that I could use. All right, let's try and get that radiator. Well, only a week and a half to 2 weeks later, I finally get all the parts. I got all this stuff first, and then I had to wait about a week, maybe, just for this, which is all the wiring and stuff for the fans. But either way, everything is here, so I'm going to continue working on with this project. What I've done so far, since I was waiting, is that I did kind of flush the coolant. My process was literally just pouring down water in there and getting it to circulate and kind of go out the drain down there. I then shot some compressed air and basically pushed whatever was out. I think most of the stuff came out from the heater. Once that was done, I repeated the same process, but just used actual 50-50 coolant and poured it in there and had that come out, and then again did the compressed air. So pretty much that should thin out stuff that is in there and gotten rid of most of the stuff that's in there. It's not perfect, but it'll do for now. I also went ahead and cleaned all of these like nipples or the parts where the hose connects, And since this piece was rusted out, what I ended up doing is just trimming like the first ½ inch because it was so like rotten. Here's the piece. I mean, as you can see, if I had continued using that, there was likelihood that most of the stuff would have just broken off and gone into the system. So I was trying to avoid that. I'm hoping that the hose that goes there reaches it just from there to there. And from what I could tell, it looks like it is going to reach. It kind of sucks, but you know, it's all I can do right now. I don't want to change anything in there. That's for a later on project. And all I did use was just a hacksaw blade and stuff some paper towel in there to try and reduce the bits that went in there and make sure that I was going to have an issue. I mean, there's no point in me changing it right now. This thing spins nicely. It doesn't move back and forth side to side. So there's no point. It's literally just this little piece because it's probably been sitting in a certain position and just corroded. That's where I'm at now. And what I'm going to actually do is there's just a couple of pieces that I wanted to paint. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint that now. Well, just a small discovery right there. That's basically going to the throttle body and kind of keeps it cool. But it is fully blocked and has a lot of rusty gunk in there. So, you know, maybe something to check on your vehicles if you have this type of setup. So here's the two pieces that I want to paint. That is from the water pump, and then this is the throttle body line that goes to keep that supposedly cool. That's the part that I took off that I just showed you where it was fully blocked. I'm actually going to try and run some stuff through here and make sure that that passage is clean. Just, you know, an extra thing. I don't think it's 100% necessary because if it was blocked and still running, well, I don't think it's an issue. You got to straighten that out. The other thing that I want to clean up and paint is the front cowl. Now this is the original one, the gray one that was on the 91 F-150, and this is on this 92 F-150 that I've been pulling parts from, and you saw me pull the engine from that a little while back. Now the reason why I want to do that is just because it would be nice to have this extra little washer fluid sprayer, because all that there is on the 91 is the center one and it favors the driver's side. Sometimes it's nice to just have a little extra on the passenger side. From what I can tell, it looks the same. It's just that these have been changed positions. Well, actually, now that I'm overlaying it and took a closer look at it, I'm not 100% sure or 100% convinced if that's actually going to work. The reason why I say that is because I think the curve here is slightly different. This angle might be a little bit different. And then this is 100% different. This curves in more, but this comes out. So that might be an issue. I think the bolt hole is probably fine. Every other bolt hole seems to kind of go pretty good. The wiper arm locations are good. Even all the holes around here are good. Even the arch for the wiper motor is good. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to overlay it onto the hood and then see if that, you know, makes a difference or if it does fit. Well, I was wrong. It does not quite fit. It looks good to the eyes, but when you actually set it up, it doesn't. So as you can see here, this arm is rubbing on the cover or the cowl. It doesn't seem to want to sit down far enough. And then clearly the arch is different than the original one. And then here you can see, if it's a bit subtle, but you can kind of see it. You see how it kind of straightens out here. But here, if I can get a good shot, here it wants to arch back. The other thing that I found is that there's for some reason such a huge gap between the front here and the actual firewall. So this must be pushed in a little bit more or something. It's such a subtle difference that if you wanted to play around with it, you probably could get it to fit. I don't feel like playing around with it. And even these little holes here, they don't quite line up. I mean, you can see it's almost touching, but the screw holes don't quite fit. So I'll scrap that idea. Honestly, it saves me a bit of work, but it would have been nice. All right, before I paint, I'm just going to basically clean all this stuff. So I'm just using some simple green. It's a concentrate mixed with water at a 50-50 ratio. Just gonna spray it on here and give it a good cleaning. It's not about being perfect or anything. This is just kind of the step one that I'm using. I'm just going to basically just get the grease and oils and whatever junk off of it. It's again, nothing special. I will shoot some brake clean on it after and make sure that it's just extra clean. I'm not going to sand it or anything. It's just a make it look pretty type thing. onto this. Hopefully this thing doesn't leak because it is quite on the rough side. Let me see if I can take that clip off. There we go. Again, just trying to break off some of the pieces if there's any that are loose, which there are. Alright, pretty much got all the loose stuff off. What I'm going to do next is just shoot some liquid in here to get that cleaned up, and then I'll move to the brake clean phase. So let me just use brake clean to shoot in there and see what happens. I think it's completely plugged up. There's nothing coming out of the bottom, and liquid is staying there. Alright, let me shoot some compressed air. Alright, drag my little pancake compressor, see what happens. Grab on the seal. There we go. Ugh. Alright, let's shoot some brake clean. Oh, there's still some junk in there. Yeah, let's see where that junk is. I'm not sure. Can't see what's going on. Yeah, the blockage is definitely here somewhere. You know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to junk this. And I think what I'm going to do is just get some heater hose and do that directly rather than trying to figure out what the issue is. There's definitely a blockage. I'm assuming somewhere in here or in here. So that looks like somewhere like 3/8 heater hose, and that's what I'm going to get. Well, saving time, this is the only piece that I'm going to paint, and let me get to it. All right, well, I was going to put this piece back in there. However, me cutting it made it a bit of a problem. I mean, I thought I would be okay, but in the end I'm not. It's actually hard to get the thickness of this past through this little bolt area and over the hose. And the way this stretches and rotates doesn't sit properly. So I'm actually going to have to figure something out to try and get that to link up again. I'm not sure how important that is, but it might be a good idea to at least just try and get something in there. But I'll figure something out and go from there, I guess. So since I want to keep moving, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to install these the sensors here and here. So it's a total of 3. There's the gauge, then there's the computer, the thermostat for the computer, and then there's the thermostat for the fans. But what's going to happen is they're actually going to, like that one is actually going to move over here, and then I'll put the fans on this one here. Alright, so the first sensor I'm going to put in is the fan sensor, which I'm putting it in the hole that had the gauge cluster sensor. Well, temperature for the gauge, where you can tell like if it's heating up or not. I am putting on some of this thread sealer, which kind of looks like that marshmallow in a container or something. I'm trying not to put a whole lot, but there's quite a lot of goop on here. Alright, I'm just going to start it by hand. Try and get in there with the socket and crank her down. Now, I'm not tightening this up like insane tightening, just enough that there's pressure, that it's tight. Just a little bit more, and that's probably about it. I'm not going to go crazy. So that's one down, 2 more to go. So this T right here is going to have the 2 other sensors. So the one for the computer and the one for the gauge. I've already fitted these 2 together and put the thread sealer, so that way it makes it easier for me to wrap around or to just like screw it into the part that's in the engine. So that way I can use this part here, the hex part. So I'm going to put some more thread sealer on there and then pop that in there. Trying not to put too much, but it kind of just slaps itself on there. So again, just going to pop that in by hand. Yeah, definitely put too much thread sealer, but it'll definitely seal up. So again, I'm not going to go crazy tight.
hopefully that this last little quarter turn, and that'll be it for that. Try and make it as flat and level as possible. That looks about right. Now I'm going to put the sensor for the gauge. And again, just by hand. There's a lot of thread sealer on there. Maybe a bit too much. Kind of making a mess here. There we go, tight enough. A little bit of a cleaning. And then here is the temperature sensor for the computer. Now this is a new one. I'm completely replacing it. The old one might be the original. It's pretty dirty on like the tip that would go into the coolant. The one that was for the gauge cluster was really clean, so it must have been or might have been changed at some point. But this could be one of my issues for the idle problem, but who knows, we'll find out, and there's no harm in replacing it. So also another thing that I had to take into consideration in the positioning was whether the ends of the sensors would like come into contact with each other. You don't want them colliding, otherwise you'll have a problem there. Plus it's nice to have a little bit of liquid pretty much all around it, at least that's my thoughts there. Alright, so that's installed. Let me just bring you in a little bit so you can kind of see what that looks like. So there's the fan, there's the gauge, and then there's the computer. All those sensors are now fully installed, and as you can tell, there's definitely too much thread sealer on there, but whatever, at this point it'll be fine. So the reason why I ended up putting it there rather than there is two things. So if you look at that space there, how much that takes, it wouldn't fit there, and there was no way that I could put it facing up, so this threading into the bottom and then these two having the sensors, because they would collide into each other, and I didn't want that. And it's better to have just a bit of a gap, at least my opinion there. So that's why I put the fan control there, or the fan temperature sensor there, and then move those two over there. The other thing is, if I were to put that there would be an air bubble in there at some point, especially in the beginning, and who knows how long it would take for that to filter out, because there's no upward flow here or flow that moves out, but there is here. This is the top, so it flows actually out here. That's for the heater core, and that is for the throttle body. So it would at least, not immediately, but relatively quickly eliminate the air bubble that would be in there, because as it fills up, it's going to go everywhere and then out here or here. At least that's the thought. I hope that's right. Again, I'm not a mechanic, but that sounds pretty logical. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is maybe figure out how I'm going to bring this wire here back to here. I have some bullet connectors. I'm going to see if that actually works, and maybe I can kind of retrofit it without cutting that wire there. We'll see. I also just realized that if I put too much thread sealer on there, maybe there's not going to be any ground contact, because that's how they work. It sends a positive signal. If it gets the ground, then the signal is completed, or the circuit is completed. So I'm not sure if it's going to pick up, because the beep is pretty low. But that's the sound that it should make. So I'm just going to put it on the ground somewhere and then see if there's continuity. That's not very clean, I think. What about here? So that's good. That's one sensor. That's the other. And if I can get in there. So that's three. So that's good. So now we have like making sure that it does ground out and that there is no issue there. And I just checked with the bullet connectors, that works fine. So I'm actually just going to make a little lead that goes across and then connect it that way. So here's my little extension. So I got a male end and a female end. Male end goes onto the wire end. And that fits perfectly. And then the female end goes onto the sensor. It's a bit of a tight fit, but boom, there you go. Just make sure that it's out of the way. Not going to hit anything. And that should be fine. Fingers crossed. Alright, the next thing that I'm going to work on is cleaning the surface for the throttle body, just to see if there's any imperfections or something. I was told that there might be a leak there, but I'm not 100% sure. So let me go ahead and scrape that. I'm also going to clean up the throttle body itself and just make sure that's good. Wipe it down with some brake clean and then put it all back together. Alright, that's pretty much done. There's not much to it. It wasn't like insanely dirty. Alright, that's it for that one. Throttle body surface. So the side that I was told that they were hearing air from is this side here. I'm not sure how true that is. It looks pretty good. I don't see any kind of, you know, change in shape or anything like that where it discolors. So who knows? All right, let me get the gasket and then we can pop that on. All right, as clean as I can get my hands. Just throw that on there. I don't know if there's a specific way. It seems kind of like there's like a positioning. So just double check that if you're doing it yourself. And get one bolt here. And where are we? I'll just do this one, which is on the top. Try not to like dirty everything. Alright, there's one. Get the second one. I'm leaving a bit of a gap because what I'll do is I'll pull the throttle body away and just make sure that everything is okay. I didn't like accidentally pinch or push the gasket in some position. Alright, move that, see where we're at. And that looks really good. So I'll tighten that up. Drive it in by hand for the most part. Alright, so they're all bottomed out. Now I'm just going to tighten it. I don't have a specific torque. I'm literally just doing it by hand. And I'm just going to do it a little bit at a time in kind of an X pattern. You know, just to try and make sure it stays flat. I'm not going to go tightening this down like crazy either. Just want to make sure it feels solid. And there we go. I got to put a little hose on here, a radiator or a coolant. I'm just going to connect this so I don't forget. Out of the way. So you got your idle air control module thingy. Basically a little solenoid. And then the throttle position sensor. I think I mentioned it already, but I already changed that some time ago, but that didn't solve my idling problem. However, this throttle position sensor, or the original one I should say, really had some bare wires and it was all exposed, so I really needed to be changed. So let's hook up the throttle wire. Just as simple as that. There is a cruise control in this truck, but I'm not going to put it back on. I actually don't like the switches that are on the inside. It's kind of scary having it in cruise control and not being able to press the buttons properly. They're actually really hard to rock and change the state that it's in. So I'm actually just going to put it to the side for now. I'm just going to leave the foot control or the throttle control on, and that's it. Alright, so there's a little tiny piece of radiator hose. Just want to make sure I got it in the right angle here. That looks about right. And then that should be easy to tighten these. Yep. Alright. One, and now onto the second one. And that should be good. Let me bring you in a little bit closer, kind of show you what it looks like now. Right, so this is where we're at. As you can see, that red wire is where I kind of did a little extension for the gauge. Using butt connectors, it worked really well. I did squeeze this one a little bit more, and then it held it in properly. The wire is red when you look underneath the sleeve, so that's why I kind of went with red. But either way, I don't think it would have mattered. So that's the hose that I had to install. The throttle body is installed, and all that looks good. All the connections have been made. So basically, I just got to figure something out for that. I'm gonna have to go into town, and I'm still waiting for the water pump pulley to dry from the paint. I also went ahead and kind of sprayed that member right there, just with some, you know, typical black paint. So I think it's some Tremclad black paint. I'll show you when I get back to it, and then just to try and reduce the rust and whatnot. Now I was hoping to be able to put the belt on today, so that way I could get it kind of out of the way, but I do need to do that first. So I think the next thing that I'm going to do is just I'm probably just going to assemble the radio. I'm going to check on that, see if I can put that in, and then assemble the radio. So that's the paint that I used there, just gloss black, made by Tremclad Rust paint. And I didn't like spray it on heavy, just a light coat to make it look nice and clean. Went and installed it. It's on there pretty good, and pretty much immediately scratched it in a few spots while I was trying to tighten it.
Unfortunately, it was still a little bit tacky, so that's why you can see some of my fingerprints and whatnot on there. But it'll dry in that position now. Looks clean and kind of out of place, but hey. Alright, and for the pièce de résistance, the actual radiator, aluminum radiator by Cold Case. If I didn't mention it already, I did take a look at these just to make sure there were no issues. Sometimes stuff during shipping gets kind of banged up. Woo-wee! So I had already disconnected this just to take a look on the inside. She's a beaut. This thing is hefty. Holy cow. There we go. And this is what it looks like for a 91 F-150. Pretty much looks identical to the stock. And it has everything there that you would need. And all the fittings. And it also includes the transmission cooler in here. Alright, let me get some of the other pieces. Alright, now this is the aluminum shroud. Nothing else in the box. Had to double check, you know. Instructions. I think it goes this way. Actually, it'll go on the other side. No, it'll go on this side. You know, a little confusing sometimes. Yeah, that looks like that fits pretty good. Looks nice. Has a little Cold Case logo there. Why don't I go ahead and peel this stuff off? That ASMR stuff. Come on, guys. Alright, I think I got everything. Let me see the nuts and bolts and see if that's for these here. Yeah. One. Well, it looked like it was going to bolt on here through the little holes. But I think that's maybe for something else. Doesn't matter. They do give rivets, and they also give self-tappers. I'll probably use the self-tappers. Number one fan. Woo-wee. Number two fan. Woo-wee. So that's the top. Sure. It's going to go on here. Probably a little clip. Yeah, so there's little clips. Let me take a look at that. One. So technically that should go right there. Now, I want to try and make these wires easy to work with. I think if I bring them up in the center, that should work just fine. Well, that's good. And put the bolts in, at least start them. I think I'm probably going to Loctite these guys. I'll set them in just for now. Alright, let me get to tightening this up, popping in the self-tappers, and then hopefully we can just lay it in there. Alright, so I pretty much centered it as best as I could. I clamped this side down here with my glove just to try and avoid scratching it, although probably not really going to make a difference overall. I'm just trying to make sure that it's as, you know, as clean as it can get, and then I'm just going to go ahead and go for it. Basically, I'm going in between these two spaces on everything that's here. Well, at least I'm trying. Yeah, I'm eyeballing it. Actually, there's a bit of a hole there for mounting stuff. So I'm just going to do it closer to the inside of this notch. Holding pretty good. I'm not trying to drive them like crazy because otherwise you're just going to strip it. Just make sure that it's clamped together and that's it. I don't think I need to clamp it for that one there. We got 3 out of 4. Should be good. Voila, that part's done. Let's get to putting a little bit of Loctite on this stuff and getting that down. Alright, just going to hand tighten them all. Don't need to go crazy. This is just plastic anyway. And then that's why I wanted to put the Loctite on there, is just to make sure it wasn't going to slip out. Just doing a light cranking down. Alright, so there's that one. I'm going to do this one and then I'll bring it back. And there we are, fully assembled. I also removed the little plugs that were in there, but it's all nice and tight. So that's what the inside looks like, and then this is what the front or the outside looks like. Too bad it doesn't say cold case there though. All right, let me see if I can slip this in without too much of an issue. All right, let's see how this goes. So far so good. Trying to make sure they're in the mounts. And they are. I just got to get the bolts. Yeah, the bolts here. There's one here, but I took the other one out. All right, pop this guy in. I'm going to try and get replacements for it, but these ones aren't too bad. All right, that looks really good. It's in the mount. Doesn't seem to be anything in the way. See if it squishes up. Now one side is a little bit stuck, but loosen it up. And now we can mount this one. And man, that fits like a glove. Wow. Let me tighten that up, and then I can call that done. Honestly, this was probably the easiest thing I had to install. So far, anyway. Now let me get a little blaster on there to make that easier to put in. Actually, no. Let me get some anti-seize so that way it doesn't break in the future. All right, a quick jog later. I'm not going to be afraid to lather this on. Make sure we get that all over the place. Definitely a little easier. I guess I could have used some shorter bolts. All right, one down. Do the same thing here. Lots of anti-seize. Alright, too much in this case for me is good. Number 2, good. Just as solid as the original. I think I'm going to have to do some massaging maybe for the transmission cooler. Well, I needed a special fitting to fit these on and into here. So I'm going to have to go get that. At the same time, I realized I forgot the rubber bushing that's supposed to go there. When I looked at the original one, they were there and I was like, oh yeah, gotta grab that too. Let me just pop this back on. Don't lose that. And well, let's undo all that again. So that's the bushing, if you will, and then there's a spacer on the inside so that way you don't, I guess, over tighten it, and that allows it to kind of stay rubbery. It fits on the back side. So on the back side, so I got the rubber bushing in here. I just have to, oh boy, don't lose it. Let me pop this corner out. There we go. And then it slides here. And then that's nice and done. Do the same thing on this side. Not too hard to put in. You just got to squeeze them and they eventually fall into place. And there we go. We're done. Well, this is where we're sitting at right now. So that's installed. I still got to do the electrical and the transmission. I need some fittings. But all that is pretty much done and installed. I even went and hooked up the overflow. So pretty much I just got to wait for some of the parts. I got to do that hose there that's going to run across here and jump across to right up here where the throttle body is. I did install the lower radiator hose because nothing gets in the way of it. I should be able to install the top one too because that should run below it. Anyway, I don't want to install anything there yet because I still need to work on that situation right there. So yeah, wiring for the fans I should say. Hoses, I need to get the clamps too, that's the other thing. Anyways, I have kind of a small list over there of what I need to get. So I will bring it back once I figure that out. Well, it's been, I would say, a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I had some health issues and ended up going into the hospital. It's all taken care of for now, and I'm just going to move on from that. I've been working a little bit on and off since then on the F-150 to try and get that coolant system back on track. I had some issues. I didn't film them because it was just too frustrating and I was so annoyed, and that happened just before I went to the hospital. But let me show you what I got right now, and I'll just give you kind of an update. So the first issue that I had was trying to get these transmission lines to connect it back to the radiator like cooling. There's a little bit of passage in there to cool the liquid. These are the fittings that I found that are actually supposed to go on this part right here, and then that goes into the actual radiator. Now this part was giving me issues. I couldn't slide it on, I couldn't twist it. It was giving me such a headache that pretty much I was losing my mind. So I decided to screw that. I will be eventually switching to a manual transmission, so I will figure some of this stuff out at that point. But all I did was just connect a transmission hose or just some hose line that can take some pressure, And since that hose there, the original metal line, is flared, it fits over and will basically provide a good point to hang on to. The top and the bottom are like that. There's a bit of an extension, kind of a loop, if you see right there. Kind of just zip tied it in 3 spots just to reduce the amount of vibration that is going in there. It should work. I was originally going to use this to kind of help some of the cooling, but there's really not much of space in there that I could actually kind of tie this in and zip tie it. I didn't want to drill more holes and do more work and blah, blah, blah. Like I said, I'm going to be switching this to manual at some point, and I figured whatever, I just grabbed the hose that was already on there. It actually came from that Rambler right there. Now, as you previously saw, there was an original metal line with 2 rubber ends on them that went to the throttle body. I couldn't pass anything through, and unless it was high pressure through the air compressor, nothing would flow. So I decided to just scrap that. I didn't even want to bother trying to clean it. Just grabbed some of this hose, popped it back where it needs to go. I will be putting some like 3/4 inch rubber kind of hose clamps here just to hold that in place. This is actually a perfect spot for it, and everything will just fit nice and tight in there. Obviously, I popped the bottom radiator hose and the top radiator hose. I put new clamps on them. It still had the original like wire type deal from the manufacturer. I took those off and swapped them out. Now, down here, I had that issue with that piece that went to the water pump, and it was kind of rusted, and I kind of trimmed it down, but then there's like that angled piece that wouldn't fit. And anyway, I had a lot of trouble. I just grabbed a piece of hose and a barb, like a brass barb that would jam in there, and I kind of just looped it in there. It's not 100% free flowing, but it does flow a little bit. At this point, I don't think it's 100% necessary. It seems like it was a later add-on. I've seen them without that, and the engines run fine. I guess I could have plugged it too, but I figured let me just put it in there, make sure that that's okay and that there's nothing wrong. Still got to connect the distributor there, but anyway, that's not a big deal. It's just a quick clip. I got the belt on. I almost forgot how it routed. I had to do a quick lookup. I was pretty close. I just had routed this section here incorrectly. There is really only one way that it can go on, so it's not a huge deal. You can't really make a mistake. It just wasn't fitting, and that's when I noticed like, hey, something's not quite right. And as I mentioned before, all the sensors are kind of in their place. I just got to do the wiring. I got to figure out a 12-volt source for the relay for the fans, and then hook that up. All right, so I've got the wire kit here. Pop that open. I'll just keep that here for now. Or not. So I know this goes to the fans. You just hook that up right away. Get rid of that. And we're done with that. Hopefully that'll reach this ground here. If that works, yeah, I will just pop those grounds there. Enough slack to be comfortable. And I know that ground goes directly to the battery, so no issue there. The next step is this honking chunk of wire. Now, I gotta figure out where I want to put the relay. And to be honest, I'm not even sure. I was just checking to see if that was ground. It's not. Technically, I could put it here, if that fits in there. Decisions. Yeah, sometimes decisions get in the way of actually doing something. I'm going to see if that fits there. And that does not fit there. And I think if I were to drill that out, it would just be, wouldn't be much metal left. All right, scratch that one. Now, let me try this little spot here. Let's see if I can get something there. It looks like that might fit a little bit better. And that deer flies, ridiculous these days. Annoy the crap out of me. All right, that looks like that is going to fit. Now, can I put it back? I am going to need a socket though, as I can't get quite in there. It's always better to have the right tools. And good enough. So this is the trigger. And these are the power. Let me get this grounded and installed out of the way. 2 ground wires there. Boom and boom. I'm actually going to check the paperwork just to make sure it's good. All right, well, they don't give you the color code of their wires. They do give you the pin numbers, but can I see? I don't know. All right, hang on. Let me check a couple things, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so this is what I figured out. Just kind of played around. These are basically the trigger for the relay to let in the higher amperage through it. This black and red wire is the fused and battery positive connected, and this all red wire is actually connected to the fans. Now, they do give you the parts for it, but I kind of messed up on this butt connector, and had to replace it with one of my own. I do like these guys here because they actually have heat shrink on them, and then you can kind of close them up, and it looks just neater. So I think I'm probably going to switch to those eventually. I never used them before. I knew that they were good, but just hadn't tried them out. So this is, again, I'm just going to connect this to the positive. This is connected to the fans. Now, unfortunately, they don't really give you anything to connect the two fans together and then join it to the single wire. So basically, I just cut a little extra length on these to expose the copper, wrap them together, shove them in, and then shove them in, and then just clamped it. It's pretty solid, should be fine. I also put in the 30 amp fuse because the instructions say to not put anything greater than 30 amps on there. So that's what I did. It actually came with it. It also came with a 40 amp, which I'm not sure why, if it doesn't go over 30 amps. But let me make these last little connections. I'm actually just going to do a little test and then see what happens. Also, side note, I left all the length of the wire because I actually don't really know where I'm going to position it at a later time. The reason is that this engine will eventually be upgraded. So I'm just going to connect the positive wire with the fuse. I'm just going to do it directly to the battery. Don't want to lose that. Pop that guy on there. Hopefully that fits. If my glove doesn't get in the way, we should be good. And that right there is perfect. All right, nothing in the way of the fan. Ground, positive. That seems to be good. Double check. Yep. So I'm going to trigger it just manually and see what happens. Technically, the fans should just pop on or not. What's going on? All right, well, let me diagnose what's going on with that. Actually, a really dumb and simple fix. Didn't connect the ground wire. Yeah, that works great. So now I'm just going to unplug this just to make sure. I'm going to zip tie these guys up in here. Like I said, I didn't trim the wires because I don't know what's happening. Put that there. Let's just probably zip tie that right there. Got to run one of these to power and one of these to the switch down there. All right, so pretty much have everything connected. I just got to find a 12-volt switch so that way when I turn the ignition on that the power goes to the relay. There is an alternator connector here that might have 12 volts. I'm not 100% sure. I am going to just try it now. If I can take my tape off of it. And let's see. Nope, that does not. Something else over here that's not being used. And I can't fit my tester in there. All right. So, it does work though. Yeah, it does. Okay. So let me just get a little pin that I can use to jam in there. I'll be right back. Well, it didn't have to go too far. I just found one of those little like wraps that they use to tie stuff together. So make sure it works. Good. Shove that in there. No 12 volt. No 12 volts. I know the key is on. At least it's on in the accessories. Actually, maybe I should just put it in the ignition and see if that does something. Well, it is in the run position. You can hear the fuel pump going. See if that does something. So that has 12 volts. What about this up here? That does not, and that does not either. Not sure what that's for, but this one does have 12 volts. It's actually less than the battery, so there might be something in there. There was a wire that was connected to the alternator. So I'm not really sure what to expect from that. Yeah, it's showing less voltage, and I don't like that. Double check this here. Trying to find something else that might be disconnected that I could use. Doesn't quite look like it. Oh, my lights are on. That's why it was kind of warm there. All right, let me play around and try and find something else. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Basically, I ended up using one of the wires from the EGR system since that's completely disconnected and I'm not using it. I tried avoiding stuff that are connected to the computer, but honestly, everything is connected to the computer. So hopefully that doesn't do anything, although it's very, very low amperage, extremely low amperage, just to trigger a relay. I did use one of these kind of connectors. They're not that great, but I didn't want to destroy the wiring. I'll just throw some tape over it and just make sure that that's sort of sealed. And again, I know these are not that great, but it's just for now. Everything else is good. Gotta trim the zip ties so I can look like a professional and kind of just go through everything, put all the stuff back in place and just fill the coolant. Got pretty much all that buttoned up. Hopefully everything is good. I'm just gonna go ahead and start filling this. And I'm gonna do like every YouTuber and not use a funnel. kidding, just kidding. Although it's not really the right funnel, but one down. Can't quite see it. Don't see any leaks just yet. Now I popped the lid in there. Okay, it's still down there. A little cellophane thing or whatever that is that's there. Try not to get it in here into the radiator. Creeping forward. Hopefully I can get the last drop and not have it fall out, and we're good. Still in there. I'm happy. All right, 2 done. On to number 3. Still not leaking. Trying my best not to spill any. Stuff ain't cheap. I'm using the good stuff. Prestone. It's getting there. It's getting there. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, so it's pretty much at the top. Get that ready. Get another one ready just in case. I may or may not need it. I don't know. I'm losing my pants. Fix that too. All right, nothing near the fans. Belts seem to be okay. Wiring out of the way. Sort of clean. All my connections made. I don't have any visible leaks at this point. I have to pop a flashlight in there just to make sure. Nothing seems to be leaking at the bottom. All right, I'm gonna actually just go ahead and turn on the engine. Get your motor running. If I can find the key. I think it's in the ignition. Not sure why, but this thing, when it sits, it tends to be a little hard to start. I'm not actually sure what the issue is. I'm gonna let the fuel pump run. Seems to be going. I'm not sure if it's the like the fuel pump regulator, or if it's the like a pressure switch or something. It's not right. Anyway, let me let that go for a little bit and see what happens. Well, got it started, but had to use some starting fluid. Not really sure what's up with that. Anyways, I'm gonna just try and fill the coolant as I go along. Not really sure what that was, why it jumped like that. The idle went up. Maybe the computer kicked in, I have no idea. Definitely warming up. So as you can see, we do have some flow, which is good. It's not completely green because maybe left over from the last coolant or whatever, but it's flowing, it's good. Temperature is rising a little bit at a time. It was below that white line where it's at right now. So just a bit of time. Fans kicked on, that's good. I didn't do anything. I think the gauge inside the truck is not that great, so I might look into changing that at some point. Just trying to see if the fans will actually shut off by themselves. Hasn't done anything yet, they're still running. Ah, they went off. Woo, that's good. So far everything's working. All right, what I think I'm gonna use, I'm just gonna shut it off, let it cool down, and then cycle it again and see what happens. Well, everything seems to be good. I do have, the only leak I have is down there, which is the drain. I may end up switching that to a plug, but that means emptying the radiator and all that. So we'll see. I tightened it up. We'll see if it still leaks tomorrow. And then I'll make a decision at that point. All the wiring is done. It's in place. The fan works. This filled up with any excess because I had ran it a second time with this completely closed. Everything else seems to be okay. I still have a bit of the idle issue, but I'm not sure if that needs to run for a little bit more on the road. So I'll figure that out. But I think for today, that's it. I'm going to just check that tomorrow and see if it needs any more coolant. And then hopefully I can get back onto the wiper motor right there. Then that will pretty much complete this video, hopefully. Fingers crossed, we'll find out. All right, so as I said in the beginning of the video, I wanted to swap out the motor for the wipers. This is the new one. The other one has been returned for a core. So I'm actually just going to hook it up and see if it does the same thing. And if it doesn't, then I'll actually just set it all up and then go from there. All right, got the key in the ignition, ready to go. I'm actually just going to turn the wipers to max and then see what happens. Well, the motor already sounds better. Doesn't sound tired. Just going to let it run for a little bit. Well, I think that's long enough. I'm pretty sure I did it a lot sooner before. So I'm going to call that a win. I'm going to now install it. All right, so I put on the plate here. and it should be pretty much ready to go. I just got to make the connections. I pretty much put some anti-seize on all the nuts and bolts there, and also spread that on there quite liberally just to make sure that that pin and all that stuff goes on no problem. So let me try and assemble that. A little bit of a tight squeeze, but whoa, as long as the arm doesn't fall too far, should be able to. Okay, well, first try, fail. Kind of doing this blind here. Although I do, you. All right, just gonna hand tighten that for now. It's seated and doesn't fall off. Okay. Well, it's not the nicest place to work in, but you can manage it. All right. Should be able to now fully tighten it. All right, I'm not gonna go crazy. That should be good enough. Not big threads. Honestly, that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to get a little bit of anti-seize on here, not much. Oh, these are pretty big threads. They just kind of fall right in. Misjudged on the depth. So I'm just going to put some anti-seize on the entire screw. And then number 3. So this number 3 has like a provision for an extra nut, because you actually put what was it, ground wire? I think it's ground wire. This guy right here goes on right here. Don't go crazy here either. I'm just going to pass it this way. Looks a little cleaner. All right, I'm just going to run a quick little test, make sure that works. Oh, got to plug it in though. And that looks good. All right, I'm actually going to get some lithium grease and maybe just shoot that down in there. Kind of get the joints and stuff like that to be, you know, maybe a little slipperier. All right, so I got it all lithium greased, more than it will ever need. I'm going to put the little cowl on and make all the small connections and then kind of screw it back in. There is a bit of a shield that goes over the little motor, so something to take into consideration. Actually, here, let me connect the windshield washer fluid, if I can tilt it enough. Maybe not, I don't know. Yep. All right. You know, not always evident. This is the best way to do this. There we go. Still connected. We're good. All right, now let's do the antenna. 4 screws, and then make my connection before it drops down and I lose it forever. All right, that's good there. Okay, oh, yeah. Whoa, these magnetic tips move stuff around. There, I'm not tightening everything down all at once because, well, really, you never know where it's going to sit. Which is definitely a tip. You don't want to tighten all your nuts and bolts before you've actually put them all in. And again, I'm not tightening this down like crazy. All right, let's make sure I can get this to fall where it needs to fall. Gotta get over the wiper stuff. I had it not too long ago. Okay, kind of down. Whew. Now it's got to slip under the window trim, that chrome piece there. Hopefully I can get that, or not, because of this speaker antenna. I think I moved some stuff that I shouldn't have, but anyway, I'll double check that. Okay, that looks good. Everything seems to be in place. Put on some little trim pieces, like this guy here. All right, now we get to going through the hundreds of screws that are on here. So again, I'm not tightening down all the screws. Now this is just a little piece of weather stripping. Since I had the 92, I looked at that one, and on my 92 F-150, it was in much better shape. So I'm just going to pull it off of there and install that. The one that came with this truck has some cracks and stuff like that. It's not a big deal, but you know, if I can use something better, why not? Kind of forgot which screws went where, but I think I got the right ones. I'm not 100% sure. Just forgetting a couple of little screws there to hold that shield in. All right, that's not going anywhere. We're good to continue. All right, let me go ahead and just tighten all this stuff down. Clean it up, make sure everything is good. All right, got the antenna on. Everything's nice and tight down here. Got the wiper blades. Let's just check to make sure that they actually actuate and set where they're supposed to set. All right, get some fluid. Well, it won't spray some windshield washer fluid, so I got to check that connection. I didn't move it, so let's just go back in there. All right, just loose wire. Connected it. Should work now, or not. Oh, might be low on fluid. All right, let's go back again. All right, all set, ready to go. I tested it, works fine. I'm just gonna make sure I'm gonna spray some on here, put the wipers on max. Well, that seems to work. So good, done. All right, just cycling it through one more time. I don't know if you can hear it, but the fans are definitely on. But if you look here at the temperature gauge, it's really not up that high. That's why I think I need to replace this. It's extremely misleading. It should be, you know, at the middle or past the middle to kind of indicate that it's hot, but it's way down here, so that's not good. Other than that, it seems to be running all right. I checked all the fluids. Transmission is just a little bit low because of the swap from the radiator, but it's still within the safe zone. Oil is good, windshield washer fluid is good. So for now, that bit is good. Although the job is not completely done, now you should hear the fans. But yeah, the job's not completely done. I do intend to kind of button up those little wires and stuff like that, make sure that that's all cleaned up and nice and neat, and then I will take it for a drive. Well, on second thought, I will not be taking it for a drive. That's the drain plug, does not seem to be sealing. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drain it and then just pull that off and put a permanent plug in there with some thread sealer. Yep, there's always a little something. Well, there you go. Went ahead and pretty much drained as much as I could. I started it the slow way by putting a little hose to the actual drain that's there, and then decided to move a little bit faster and pull the whole plug out. This guy right here is the culprit. I'm not exactly sure how it operates. It's a little dirty and there's a bee or something trying to get to my glove. Anyway, it was not leaking from the threads. It was actually leaking from the actual spout where you would actually go ahead and drain it and all that. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find something that's a plug with this thread on it, and then shove that in there with some thread sealer and be done with it, and that way it won't leak at all. All right, so I went back into town and I picked up some of these rubber mounted clips there that hold in hoses and wires. Got the this kind of radiator hose all stuck up and in its place. Kind of zip tied all the wires back in place, just kept them out of the way, made sure that they were nice, tight, and clean. That's pretty much it. I've refilled all the coolant since I put that plug in. Just a little tiny little plug that basically went all the way in. Filled the reservoir, everything looks good. I ran it again, cycled it just to make sure that everything was okay. Everything seems to be fine, doesn't seem to be leaking. So I'm gonna call that done. I did move it from its original space, so I know that everything is at least, you know, working in the place that it needs to be. All right, as it's raining and I'm just trying to finish this video, which is kind of typical for me. I also wanted to say that the drain plug, this guy right here, may never have been the actual issue as to why it was leaking. I really believe that the issue was user error. Me, myself, and I. Currently, the position that it's in, it's actually in the closed position. And like this, it's in the open position. As you can see, that's where it would drain and through that hole, then go through all the way out to here. And you can kind of see that there's a centerpiece. Now, I never realized that that was the way it was, or that it was supposed to be that way, because at first that didn't drain very well. You can see there's kind of some junk in there, either just from manufacturing or just, you know, stuff that kind of accumulated as mine was slowly leaking. Anyway, so I don't believe this is the fault of the manufacturer cold case in this case, haha. But I did plug it just that way because I know for sure no issue. But I looked at it later and realized my mistake. So now, like I said, this is all buttoned up. It's ready to go for our test drive, but right now it's raining, so it's not really going to push the radiator to see if it's actually cooling or not. So I kind of want to wait till a bit of a warmer day. So even on a rainy day, I still get the deer flies that bother the crap out of me. As you can tell, they're even flying right in front of the camera. It's super annoying. I'm going to try and make this quick. So cold case radiators worked really well so far in my testing. The install, super easy. The only issues I had were user error. Also went and installed the wiper motor, and that went in perfect. No problems there either. That was provided by Napa. It's just a remanufactured one. Works fine as far as I can tell right now. And since it's raining today, it would actually been a great day to test that out. But you know, stuff happens, and it's not really a good day to test the radiator because it's too cool. So if you ever want to do something like this, I recommend doing it. It's not that hard. It takes a little bit of time. Just go ahead, take your time, and put it all together. Super simple, not complicated. Anyway, guys, I just want to say thank you. And that's it for this one. Take it easy.